Welcome to Good Horses, the podcast of the American Quarter Horse Association, where we talk about good horses. My name is Jim Jennings, and today we're doing another of our Legends Remembered segments of good horses, and we're going to talk about one of the legends in our breed. In Legends Remembered, we highlight some of the horses that have been inducted into the American Quarter Horse Hall of Fame, which is the highest honor that can be achieved in our industry. Our subject today is a mare named Casey's Ladylove, who was the progenitor of what is probably the number one line of barrel racing horses in the world. She was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017. Casey's Ladylove was a 1961 foal, and her pedigree is foundation breeding at its best. She was by Casey's Poco, by Poco Dunn, by Poco Ana, and she was out of a mare called Lady Diane. Both Lady Diane's sire and dam were by Joe Tom M.C. by Joe Hancock. She was owned by James and Frances Louiseau of Egan, South Dakota, but how they ended up with her is a pretty good story. While the family was in Amarillo for the unveiling of the Hall of Fame exhibit in 2017, we sat down with Jim Louiseau and Liz Holman, who are James and Frances' son and daughter. Since the interview, Jim has passed away, but he was here in Amarillo with Liz, and they told us how the mare joined their family.
Well, there was a sale in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, quarter horse sale, and it was mostly from area breeders in Minnesota that put horses on the sale. And it was real early in the spring. My mother and dad went to the sale, and they came home later that evening, and they bought two horses, but they didn't bring them back with them. They just took a pickup, and then a few days later or next day, we went over to get them, the two horses. One of them was for myself. That was a young mare, a yearling mare that came from an area north of there, and the Crow River ran through that area, and the mare's name was Crow River Sioux, and it was habit breeding. Nice, big, thick bay mare. Along with that, they bought this nice buckskin mare that was a year older, and she was 2 years old, and she had come from an area breeder right there. And my mother had bought the horse while my dad had went out to see what else was coming through the sale ring. The mare came through, and then she bought the horse, and she was a little nervous because it was the highest selling horse that day. And I believe it was like $720 that she gave for the horse. Today, that would be, it would be you'd be given, for a young horse like that, you'd be given $7,000 or $10,000. And we were all excited. We needed horses. I was probably 14, 15 at the time, and there's 8 of us, children, and we all rode. Everybody rode. And some of the kids were still riding ponies, and we needed some bigger horses. So when we got her home, I monkeyed around with her, and she just was nothing to break. It didn't take long at all. We had her going, and that spring we run stock cows in the corn stalks, and they'd have their calves there early, and every morning and every night we'd have to go check on them cows, and then pretty soon that mare was going on that little trip, and the next year then we were taking her to horse shows, and it was my sister's horse to ride because she didn't have a horse.
The sister that Jim was referring to was Barb. There were 8 kids in the family, and they all rode, and Casey's Ladylove was Barb's horse until they started breeding her. Barb showed her in some horse shows, and like the rest of the family, she went in everything, from Western pleasure to the speed events. And then for fun, James started organizing some match races at the horse shows, and when Casey's Ladylove's foals started winning those match races, it opened some eyes.
My dad didn't go to the horse shows to begin with. My mother took us to the horse shows, and he stayed home and worked. Then when we started doing better, then he started going because he got more interest in it. Then he wanted to race. He always wanted to race a horse, and he started putting match races together at the horse shows. They really didn't have them, but he talked some people into match racing against a good horse. And and that went on for a couple of years. And then he started, this mare and another mare started raising some nice colts, and they started taking them to Park Jefferson. And they had races every weekend in Park Jefferson all summer long. They'd start out at Fort Pierre, go to Belle Fourche, end up at Park Jefferson, and they'd run down there. And then there was another track in Sioux City that was called Aticat, and they would race in the fall there. And then all the fairs would have some horse racing. and like this mare's colts and another mare, but mostly this mare's colts ran, and it was the mares that ran. All the mares, I mean, they were just outstanding, and but they went to Denver and they raced. Yeah, and once he got going with that, there was no stopping him. He was he was sold.
We grew up in farming community at the time, and it wasn't really ranch country, and people didn't do an awful lot on horseback in our in our neck of the woods. And so when my parents started to race the horses, I've heard Jim say that the neighbors kind of started going to the horse races that were close by, and then they found out if they would bet on one of those Frenchman's horses, they'd win some money, and they thought that was a pretty good deal, and they really enjoyed going to the races. And we had a priest. His name was Father Mowry. He loved to go to the races, didn't he?
Okay.
And if it was a race day and he was going, he'd come out on the altar with his boots under his robe, and he'd give a 20-minute mass, and he'd be out the back door.
Of course, Casey's Ladylove became a legend as a producer of speed through her daughters, her granddaughters, and further on down. But she wasn't bought as a broodmare. She was bought to use, and she was picked because Frances Louiso liked her looks.
Well, she was like 15-1. She was really wide in the back. She was put together really neat. The pictures that we have of her now are, later in life, but when she was younger, she was a nice looking mare. When my sister was taking her to horse shows, she would use her in Western Pleasure and run barrels, run poles on her. I mean, she done everything. We used her on the farm. They herded cows on her. They would go down and bring cattle up out of the pasture. And then, like what I talked about, we don't have a lot of pasture in eastern South Dakota, so they run the cattle on corn stalks. After they take the corn out, then they graze the corn stalks. And a horse is the only thing that would work is the way they used to cultivate the corn, and you couldn't use it for women. We didn't even have anything like that. So that mare was used, just like a ranch horse. She just filled the bill everywhere. And I don't think she ever got crippled. She didn't have any navicular. I mean, she was sound, right up to the end. And but just a real gentle, and anybody could ride her. It didn't make any difference. Kids could ride her, and then she would perform. So she was just all around horse.
Casey's Ladylove had a number of colts. Once she started foaling, then my sister wasn't riding her anymore, and then my sister eventually married and had a family of her own, and Casey's Ladylove was raising foals every year. And probably 12 or 13 years into it at least, one of her she foaled, and the foal fell into a stock dam and drowned, so she didn't have a colt that year. And I was probably goat tying in the local rodeos and needed a mount. And Dad said, well, pull Casey's Ladylove up and go to riding her. I don't know that I'd ever ridden her before, and she probably hadn't had a saddle on her in 13 years. Oh, that year we used her for all kinds of things. I rodeoed and goat tied on her, and we had a local rodeo that fall, and I know you guys flagged on her. She went all day at that rodeo. She just would do anything. And her daughters, some of them were like that too. It didn't matter how long you hadn't been on them. They were willing to go when you wanted to ride them.
As a broodmare, Casey's Ladylove had 15 foals. The Louisos bred her the first time to Laughing Boy, who was by Lightning Bar by 3 Bar.
Well, they worked with they worked with Pat Cowan. They had bought horses from the Cowan Ranch at Highmore, and Pat Cowan always had some kind of a good horse to breed with, and he had a horse called Laughing Boy that him and Tex Fulton had bought, and that was a 3 Bars horse, and so that's what they bred those mares to when they first started breeding to. That's what they used, and he could run, and his colts could run, and a lot of people ended up with his colts from that horse later that they went like with this mare. If they had some Laughing Boy in them, they were they could perform, they could run, and they were good in the box, and they had a lot of mind, and that's where they kind of started. And then once those colts were born and were from Laughing Boy, she had to go somewhere else. when she bred those colts, then she started looking at, other horses that had ran good, and that was a good deal. I mean, she would, at that time you didn't ship semen. You took the mare, got the mare bred, brought it back again, and she would just breed 2 or 3 of them mares that way every fall or every spring, and that helped produce some good colts too.
They named the first foal Frenchman's Bars, and then there was Frenchman's Buck 67, Frenchman's Fox, Frenchman's Luck, and the last foal by Laughing Boy was Frenchman's Lady. You can see that we have a pattern here.
My dad's family is French. My great-grandfather came from France. And it was just so easy to, that was just what she did. She wanted to put a name together that would do just what it did. And, she just named it Frenchman's this and Frenchman's that. And that worked out very well. So.
At the time some of the kids were going to rodeos and horse shows, and the announcers just had a lot of difficulty saying our last name. Even among us, we say it a little bit differently. I say Loizo, and I think you say Loiza.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but the announcers could really get it mixed up, and so she thought the Frenchmans, everybody could say that. That was part of the reason she did it. My mother often said it would be very interesting to know how many horses today have French or Frenchman's in their name. When it started out, it all started right there with the first one was Frenchman's Bars, Casey's Ladylove's daughter by Laughing Boy. And at that time, she used to say you could put up to a 4-letter word behind Frenchman's. And every year there was 1 or 2, and now how many are registered every year with the French in it? It'd be interesting to know.
Frenchman's Lady was a 14-year-old when she was bred to Sunfrost, who was by Doc's Jack Frost by Doc Bar. The resulting foal was named Frenchman's Guy. And although other foals out of daughters of Casey's Ladylove had done well on the racetrack and in the arena, Frenchman's Guy set the new standard. However, his standard was in the breeding barn. Today, he's the number 3 barrel racing sire in history, with offspring that have earned almost $15 million in barrel racing alone. Frenchman's Lady also produced Lady Lord, who carried Mary Bonagovsky to the 1988 Badlands Circuit Championship and the 1989 National Circuit Finals Rodeo Championship, and she was ridden at the 1990 NFR by Cheryl Luman. She has earned more than $70,000 in WPRA barrel racing. Casey's Ladylove was bred 3 times to Tiny Circus by Tiny Watch by the thoroughbred Anchor Watch. 2 were geldings, but the third was a mare, Casey's Charm. When Casey's Charm was bred to Sunfrost, she produced a gelding named French Flash Hawk. Now, you may be thinking that you have not heard of French Flash Hawk, but I'll bet you have. You just know him by his nickname, Bozo. Bozo was purchased as a 2-year-old by Christy Peterson for $400. The gelding jumped on the rodeo world in 1993, finishing a close second for the World Championship, nearly upsetting the legends Charmaine James and Scamper in their 10th championship year. But Peterson and Bozo stormed back in 1994, winning the first of 4 consecutive WPRA world titles. The duo won 3 more world titles in 1996 through 1998. They also won 3 reserve world titles, 5 consecutive National Finals Rodeo average titles, and 4 National Circuit Finals Rodeo titles. Bozo was voted AQHA WPRA Horse of the Year 5 consecutive times, 1995 through 1999, and the WPRA's Horse with the Most Heart 4 times, 1995 through 1998. He was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2018.
And Mother always gave all the credit to Christy Peterson. Mother was so good about she knew she had nice horses, but she always said it took a good horseman to get him to achieve. And she was really proud of the fact the people that rode her horses did so well.
But Casey's Charm's claim to fame wasn't just with Bozo. In 1997, Mel Potter purchased Bozo's full brother, P.C. Frenchmans Hayday, who Potter and his daughter Sherry Servey called Dinero. Dinero was the sire of multiple top performers, including D.M. Sissy Hayday, who is one of the highest-earning barrel horses of all time. D.M. Sissy Hayday, who her owner Haley Kensel calls Sister, has won almost $3.5 million and has been the AQHA WPRA Horse of the Year 2 times, 2018 and 2025. During 2025, Kensel ran Sister at 21 rodeos, placing in 20 of them, including winning 5. Sister has been the world champion barrel racing horse 4 times. Sister and Kensel hold the arena records at both the Thomas and Mack Arena in Las Vegas with a 1311 and in Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas with a 1656. The NFR was held at Globe Life Field in 2020 due to COVID-19 restrictions in Las Vegas. Potter crossed Dinero on a mare called Miss Meterjet and named the foal MP Meter My Hay, who he called Stingray. Stingray and Servey won the World Championship in 2010 and 2013, won the NFR average in 2009 and 2013, and ran the fastest time at 3 NFRs. Stingray split the 2011 AQHA WPRA Horse of the Year honors with Brittany Posey Tanasi's horse, Yeah, He's Firing. Then there was Custer, whose real name is French First Watch. Custer was by Frenchmans Guy and was owned by Jill Welsh. Due to illness, Welsh was unable to qualify Custer for the NFR, finishing 16th place in 2015. However, the horse was still named the 2015 AQHA WPRA Horse of the Year. There were also 2 geldings out of Casey's Ladylove, Love-A-Lord and Casey's Lord, both by the stallion Liege Lord, that did well. Love-A-Lord is an AQHA superior barrel horse, and Casey's Lord was a successful barrel horse that went to the NFR in 2000. Casey's Ladylove was foaled in 1961. That's 65 years ago. Yet despite all those years, her blood is still strong in the barrel racing industry. At the 2025 National Finals Rodeo, 6 of the top 15 barrel racers rode horses that go back to her.
We didn't realize how good that mare was, for quite a while, but then we started putting it all together, and we looked at all her colts ran good and all them colts are running good, either in performance or on the track and the barrels and everything just went back to that, just a V right back to that mare.
If someone had told our parents when they purchased that pretty little buckskin mare that she was going to have an impact on the industry that went out 50 years, that because of that mare they were going to be NFR champions and racehorse champions, and ultimately that she would receive the greatest honor that AQHA affords any horse or any individual, they'd have thought they were crazy. And they said that. They bought her for a mount for their children and to raise good horses for their children. But clearly Casey's Ladylove was simply destined for greatness.
Yes, she was destined for greatness. That's the story of Casey's Ladylove, one of the great ones. Hope you've enjoyed our show today, and be sure to keep checking the AQHA website because we'll have more legends remembered as we talk about good horses.